I never imagined I would live long enough to see my own daughter look at me with disgust in her eyes. After 40 years of caring for strangers at their most fragile moments inside Boston Memorial Hospital, I found myself crawling across my own bedroom floor. 68 years old, fresh surgical stitches burning in my knee, tears dripping onto hardwood that I had helped pay for. "Mom, what are you doing?" Melissa stood in the doorway. She wasn't rushing toward me. She wasn't alarmed. She was irritated. "I've been calling for 20 minutes. I whispered, my throat raw from pain and humiliation. "I need the bathroom, and my medication. We can't hear you from downstairs. You know that." She sighed dramatically, checking her watch. "Derek and I have dinner with the hospital board in an hour." Dinner? I hadn't known about any dinner. They never mentioned it when they agreed to care for me after my total knee replacement, the surgery I postponed for years because I was always too busy taking care of everyone else. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. Even now, even broken, even bleeding, I was apologizing for needing help. Melissa finally assisted me to the bathroom. Her hands were efficient, clinical, but cold. Not the way I taught her to handle patients. Not the way I held her hand when she was scared of the dark. I noticed the diamond watch on her wrist, my Christmas gift to her. The designer dress. The house around us. So much of their life had been made possible by my decades of saving, sacrificing, and giving. When she helped me back to bed, Derek appeared, already in his tailored suit. "Everything okay in here?" he asked, barely glancing at me. "Mom needs her medication," Melissa said sharply. "Can you get it? I need to finish my makeup." "Again?" Derek snapped. "Didn't she just take it 3 hours ago? It's her scheduled dose." They were talking about me, like I wasn't even there. I tried to lean toward the nightstand. "I can reach it." No, he said, clipped and annoyed, shoving the pill bottle into my hand along with a glass of water. And then it happened. The childproof cap slipped from my fingers. The bottle dropped. Pills scattered across the floor. "For God's sake!" Derek exploded. "That's it. I've had enough." Melissa rushed back in. "What now? Your mother dropped her pills everywhere. I don't have time for this." I tried to reach down. Pain shot through my surgical leg like fire. "Stop!" Melissa snapped. "You'll tear your stitches and then we'll have to drag you back to the hospital." "I'm sorry," I whispered again, tears spilling freely now. That's when they both broke. Years of resentment poured out like poison. "Do you know what we've given up this week?" Melissa shouted. "I've rescheduled 3 surgeries. 3. I've missed 2 critical meetings," Derek added. "We are not your servants, Anne." And he used my first name. "And we are definitely not your nurses." Melissa's next words sliced deeper than any scalpel I'd ever held. "You spent your entire life taking care of strangers. Did you really expect us to drop everything for you? We have careers too. Not everyone can be the legendary Nurse Simmons," Derek muttered with unmistakable contempt. Then came the sentence that shattered something inside me. "We are not your caregivers," they shouted together. "We have our own lives." In that moment, something inside me crystallized. I thought about the down payment I gave them for this house, the tuition I paid for Melissa's medical school, the emergency funds I quietly transferred whenever they fell short. And I heard Thomas's voice in my memory, my late husband gone 15 years. "Annie, you can't buy love. Not even from family." My hand stopped shaking. My tears dried. A calm, cold and clear settled over me. I reached for my phone. "What are you doing?" Melissa asked, suddenly cautious. "Making 2 very important calls," I replied. "You should go to your dinner. Don't worry about me." They looked confused but relieved. "We'll be back around 11, Derek muttered, already backing out. As they left, I heard them whispering. Little did they know, I was already deciding what to do with them. I dialed the first number. "Hello, this is Ann Simmons. I need to speak with Mr. Peterson in accounts. It's urgent." When the bank manager answered, my voice did not tremble. "I need all joint accounts with Melissa and Derek Winters frozen immediately. Remove their access to my personal accounts. Prepare a full accounting of withdrawals from the past 5 years. And cancel all automatic transfers." "Mrs. Simmons, are you certain?" "Absolutely. And one more thing," I added. Has the mortgage for 247 Beacon Street been processed this month? Silence. No, Mrs. Simmons. It's the third consecutive month it's been late. Of course it was. The house I helped buy. The house where I was now treated like a burden. And my name was still on that deed. My second call was to my attorney of 20 years. James, I need formal eviction papers drawn up. 48 hours to vacate. That's harsh, he warned gently. They've had years of my money, I replied. They've had enough time. After hanging up, I stared at the ceiling. For the first time since surgery, I felt peace. The pills still lay scattered on the floor. But the deeper pain, the betrayal, had sharpened into resolve. Using the walker they provided reluctantly, I made it to the bathroom alone. I looked in the mirror. Hair tangled. Eyes swollen. Shoulders bent. For decades I was Nurse Simmons, confident, respected, strong. When had I allowed myself to become small? I splashed cold water on my face. I would not spend another night in that house. I dialed the only person I knew would show up without complaint. Vivian Torres? It's Anne. I hate to ask, but I need help. And as I waited for her voice on the other end, I realized something powerful. For 40 years I had opened doors for everyone else. Now, I was finally becoming the gatekeeper of my own life. 20 minutes later, she was at the door. Her warm brown eyes widened the second she saw me. My God, and what's happening? Where are Melissa and Derek? At a dinner, I said quietly, the weakness of that explanation hanging heavy in the air. Vivian didn't need more details. She had always seen through the excuses I made for Melissa. I'm taking you home with me. Right now. I can't impose. Stop it, she cut in firmly. For once in your life, let someone take care of you without arguing. As she helped me gather my medications and a few essentials, the truth poured out of me. The cruel words, the years of financial support, the unpaid mortgage, the phone calls I had just made. Instead of shock, Vivian nodded with grim satisfaction. It's about damn time, Annie. I've watched you give and give while they take and take for years. Why didn't you say something? I asked, wincing as we moved carefully down the stairs. Would you have listened? Her steady gaze met mine. You've always been determined to see the best in Melissa, even when there wasn't much to see. The truth stung, but I couldn't deny it. When we reached her car, she helped me carefully into the passenger seat. You know this won't be pretty when they find out, right? I nodded, watching my daughter's house, the house my money had bought, shrink in the side mirror. I'm counting on it. At Vivian's comfortable condo, she settled me into her guest room, ironically more accessible and welcoming than the one Melissa and Derek had given me. As she helped me into bed, something inside me finally broke. I cried. Not the silent, polite tears of someone trying not to be a burden, but deep, wrenching sobs. The kind that come from mourning decades of misplaced devotion. Vivian sat beside me, her hand steady on my shoulder. Get it all out, honey. Tomorrow's going to be a new kind of battle. She was right. For 40 years I had fought to save lives, to ease suffering, to bring comfort to the sick and dying. Now, at 68 I was facing a different fight. One for self-respect, for boundaries, for the understanding that generosity without reciprocity isn't kindness. It's self-destruction. As I drifted to sleep, my phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Dinner running late. Don't wait up. I turned the phone off without responding. They'd discover soon enough that I wasn't waiting up. In fact, I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. The nurse who had spent her life caring for others was finally caring for herself. I woke to the sound of my phone ringing non-stop. 9:17 a.m. 23 missed calls. 35 text messages. All from Melissa and Derek. Where are you, Mom? This isn't funny. Your walker is still here but you're gone. Answer your phone. The most recent message was different. There's some man here with legal papers. What's going on? James had delivered the eviction notice. I could picture Melissa's face. Shock, disbelief, frantic calculation. Derek pacing, running his hands through his hair the way he did when hospital budgets didn't balance. My finger hovered over the call button. Vivian gently took the phone from my hand. Breakfast first, she said firmly. You'll need your strength. She had made eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. I couldn't remember the last time someone had made me breakfast. At Melissa's house, I had been expected to fend for myself, barely able to stand. They found the papers, I said quietly. Vivian nodded. Good. How do you feel? Terrified. Relieved. Guilty. I looked at her. Is it strange to feel guilty for standing up for myself? For you? It's practically a reflex, she replied gently. You've spent your whole life making sure everyone else's oxygen mask was secure before thinking about your own. My phone rang again. Melissa's face lit up the screen. You should answer, Vivian said. Put it on speaker. I inhaled deeply and pressed the button. Hello, Melissa. Mom, where are you? Her voice was shrill, panicked. There's a lawyer here saying we have to leave in 48 hours. And the bank froze our accounts. What's happening? I think you know exactly what's happening, I said calmly. I've taken your words to heart. You're not my nurses. And I'm not your ATM. Is this because of yesterday? We were stressed, Mom. I can and I have, I interrupted, surprising myself with my steadiness. The house payments you've forgotten for 3 months? That stops now. The emergency funds you've used for vacations and renovations? That stops too. Derek's voice cut in. This is completely unreasonable. Is it? I asked. Was it reasonable to leave your mother-in-law crawling on the floor for 20 minutes? Was it reasonable to resent caring for me for 1 week after I paid for Melissa's entire medical education? Silence. Then Melissa again, softer, calculating. Mom, come home. We'll talk about this like adults. I am home, I replied. Just not at your house. Where are you? With someone who actually cares about my well-being. Vivian gave me an encouraging nod. The eviction stands, Melissa. You have until tomorrow morning. You can't do this. Where are we supposed to go? You're both highly paid medical professionals. Figure it out. The words felt foreign, direct, unapologetic. This isn't you, Mom, she whispered. Someone's influencing you. Is it Vivian? Vivian rolled her eyes dramatically. No one is influencing me except you and Derek. You showed me exactly who you are. Consider this a lesson I should have learned years ago. We'll fight this, Derek growled. You can't throw us out of our home. Actually, I can. Check the deed. My name is still on it because you insisted it would help with the mortgage application. The mortgage you haven't been paying. Whispering on their end. Panic setting in. What do you want? Melissa asked. Is this about money? It's not about money. It's about respect. Relationships aren't transactional. After a pause, her voice cracked. I'm your daughter. Yes, I said softly. And I will always love you. I steadied my voice. But love without respect isn't healthy. I've enabled behavior that isn't serving anyone. That ends now. So you're cutting us off? I'm creating boundaries. This isn't over, Derek warned. I've regretted many things, I replied. Setting boundaries won't be one of them. And I ended the call. Vivian reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Anne. The phone began ringing again. I turned it off completely. It wasn't easy, I admitted, feeling drained, yet lighter than I had in years. But it was necessary. As Vivian helped me to the couch, I realized something extraordinary. For the first time in decades, I wasn't calculating what someone else needed from me. And that felt like freedom. Instead, for the first time in years, I found myself asking a question that had never truly been mine before. What do I need? And the answer forming in my heart looked nothing like the life I had been living. When James called that afternoon to inform me that Melissa and Derek were attempting to contest the eviction, I wasn't surprised. What startled me was my reaction. Not panic. Not regret. But a steely resolve I hadn't felt since my early nursing days, when I stood my ground against dismissive doctors who underestimated my expertise. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent due to your medication and recent surgery, James explained, his tone calm and professional. They've contacted your surgeon requesting your medical records. They won't get them, I replied evenly. Doctor-patient confidentiality still applies, even when the family includes physicians. That's correct, James said. But they're building a case that you're being unduly influenced and are incapable of making sound financial decisions. A humorless laugh escaped me. Interesting argument from people who haven't paid their mortgage in 3 months, despite earning 2 six-figure incomes. James chuckled softly. I made a similar point to their hastily acquired attorney. And don't worry, their case is weak, especially considering you've been making sophisticated financial and legal decisions your entire career. After the call, Vivian helped me with the physical therapy exercises I had neglected at Melissa's house. The pain was excruciating. Necessary. A perfect metaphor for what I was enduring emotionally. They're not going to let this go easily. I winced as I bent my knee. Of course not, Vivian said gently, supporting my leg. You've pulled the financial rug out from under them. Money reveals people's true colors. I keep replaying all the signs I ignored. I admitted. The way Melissa would stiffen whenever someone at the hospital mentioned my name. The small comments Derek made about my interference, even while accepting my help. You wanted to believe the best in them, Vivian said. That's not weakness, Anne. Some people mistake kindness for surrender. Around 6 that evening, I briefly turned my phone back on. Almost immediately, it lit up with a message from an unexpected source, Caroline Jenkins, my former nursing colleague now working at the rehabilitation facility affiliated with Boston Memorial. Your daughter was here asking about available rooms for you. She said you're having cognitive issues after surgery and need supervised care. Something feels off. Call me. My hands trembled as I showed Vivian the message. They're trying to have you committed, Vivian said, outrage burning in her voice. To a rehab facility, I added quietly, the realization crystallizing, where they can argue I need constant supervision. And once you're there, Vivian said, they could petition for temporary guardianship. The pieces were falling into place, especially if they convinced my doctors I wasn't thinking clearly. I called Caroline immediately, explaining everything. I knew something wasn't right, she said firmly. Melissa was asking about memory care units, which makes no sense for a knee replacement patient. She kept insisting you were confused. Caroline, if anyone tries to admit me without my consent. Say no more, she interrupted. I'll alert every department. No one admits you without speaking directly to you. And I'll inform your surgeon. No sooner had I ended the call than the doorbell rang. Vivian peered through the peephole, then stepped back, her face tight. It's Melissa. And she's not alone. A police officer? I asked, dread tightening my chest. No. Paramedics. I think they're trying to force this. My heart pounded as Vivian cracked the door, keeping the security chain engaged. Can I help you? I'm here to see my mother, Melissa snapped. I know she's in there. She doesn't wish to receive visitors, Vivian replied calmly. This isn't social, Melissa shot back. We're concerned about her mental state and physical safety. We've brought medical transport. The paramedic shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, we received a call about an elderly post-surgical patient experiencing confusion. That elderly patient is a respected medical professional, Vivian responded coolly. And she is not confused. That's for doctors to determine, Melissa insisted. Vivian, interfering could be considered elder abuse. I had heard enough. Using my walker, I made my way to the door. Open it, Vivian. She hesitated, then removed the chain. Melissa's eyes widened when she saw me standing there, dressed, composed, fully alert. Mom, we've been so worried. No, I said steadily. You've been worried about your finances and your reputation. Not about me. I turned to the paramedic. Sir, I apologize for the false call. I had a total knee replacement last week. I am alert and oriented. She's on heavy pain medication, Melissa insisted. I reduced it 2 days ago, I countered. And I have made rational decisions my entire life, including the decision to stop enabling ungrateful family members. Perhaps I should call my supervisor, the paramedic muttered. That won't be necessary. James stepped forward from the hallway. I'm Mrs. Simmons's attorney. Her competency was formally assessed this morning by an independent psychiatrist. This was news to me. James had been thorough. Melissa's face flushed. You had no right to freeze our accounts. That money was promised. There it was. Not concern. Panic. I had every right, I replied calmly. And I never promised unlimited access to my life savings. What about everything you owe me? She cried. I sacrificed. Sacrificed. I repeated. I paid for your education, your wedding, your home. And you held it over me my whole life. She screamed. Perfect Nurse Simmons, always generous, always admired, making sure I never measured up. The mask had fallen. The paramedic stepped back. James positioned himself between us. It's time to leave. As Melissa was escorted away, I saw something I had refused to see for years. Not just entitlement, but resentment. Deep, long-rooted, festering. I closed the door and leaned heavily on my walker, exhaustion crashing over me. Are you okay? Vivian asked softly. No, I said honestly. But I will be. Something inside me had broken. The final fragile thread of hope that my relationship with my daughter could someday be what I dreamed. Felt like a death. And like any death, it would require mourning. But first, I needed to protect myself. Because the storm was only beginning. The next morning, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Hello, Mrs. Simmons. This is Dr. Harrison, your knee surgeon. His voice carried unmistakable concern. I thought it best to contact you personally. Your daughter has been rather persistent regarding your post-operative care. I let out a slow sigh and sank deeper into Vivian's comfortable armchair. Let me guess, I said quietly. She suggested I'm experiencing confusion, or some sort of cognitive decline. Something along those lines, he confirmed carefully. She's requested copies of your surgical reports and medication lists, claiming she's concerned about adverse reactions. As your surgeon, I found that unusual, especially since she attended every pre-surgical consultation where we thoroughly discussed potential side effects. I straightened slightly. Dr. Harrison, I want to be completely transparent. My daughter and I are in the middle of a serious personal conflict that has absolutely nothing to do with my surgery or recovery. She's attempting to use my medical situation as leverage. There was a pause. I suspected as much, he admitted. Mrs. Simmons, I've known you professionally for 15 years. The idea that you would suddenly become incapable of making sound decisions seems highly improbable. Relief washed over me. Thank you for calling me directly. Of course. And just to reassure you, I've documented in your file that all medical information requires your explicit personal authorization. Your status as a healthcare professional ensures certain protections. After hanging up, I turned toward Vivian, who had been listening quietly from the kitchen. She's trying every angle, isn't she? Of course she is, Vivian replied, placing a warm cup of tea in my hands. You cut off her financial supply line. People get desperate when the gravy train stops running. As the day progressed, more calls followed. Each one revealed just how aggressively Melissa was working to undermine me. My primary care physician, my pharmacist, even the director of nursing at Boston Memorial, where I had worked for decades. All of them had received alarming reports from my deeply concerned daughter and were calling to verify the truth. With every conversation, my resolve strengthened. These weren't just professionals. They were colleagues, friends, people who knew my character and competence. Their calls weren't mere formalities. They were gestures of respect built over years of trust. By mid-afternoon, James arrived with news about the eviction. They've moved out, he reported, settling onto Vivian's sofa. Not willingly, of course. The sheriff had to be present. Apparently there was quite a scene. My paralegal oversaw everything. Where will they go? I asked despite myself. Worry still crept in. James and Vivian exchanged a look. They're adults with resources, James said gently. That's no longer your responsibility. Old habits, I admitted. I've spent my entire life worrying about Melissa. And how has that worked out for you? Vivian asked softly. Before I could answer, my phone rang again. It was Robert Chun, the bank manager I'd spoken to 2 days earlier. Mrs. Simmons, I thought you should know your son-in-law visited the bank today. He was quite agitated, demanding access to your accounts. He claimed you had authorized him as your financial proxy. My blood ran cold. I did no such thing. We're aware, he reassured me. Security escorted him out after he became belligerent. However, he was carrying documents that appeared to bear your signature. Forgeries, I whispered. the betrayal slicing deeper than I expected. Most likely, Robert agreed. We've added additional security measures. Any major changes now require in-person verification. After the call ended, I sat in stunned silence. They're trying to steal from me, I said faintly. My own daughter and her husband are actively attempting to take control of everything. James leaned forward, grave. And it may be time to consider a restraining order. That seems extreme, I protested weakly. What's extreme? Vivian countered firmly. Is attempting to have your mother committed under false pretenses. What's extreme is forging financial documents. Deep down I knew they were right. This wasn't a temporary family dispute. It was a calculated attempt to seize control of my autonomy and assets. There's something else, James said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. Your will. Your healthcare proxy. Melissa is currently listed, correct? I nodded slowly. We need to change that immediately, he said. Given recent events, keeping her in those roles poses serious risk. For 40 years I had never considered naming anyone else. Even after Thomas died, it seemed natural, mother to daughter, generation to generation. Who would I name instead? I asked, genuinely lost. Vivian squeezed my hand. That's entirely your decision. But it should be someone you trust completely. Someone who truly has your best interests at heart. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Caroline. Thought you should know. Several of us from the old nursing team are organizing a rotation schedule to help with your recovery once you're ready. No one messes with one of our own. Just say the word. Tears filled my eyes as I showed the message to Vivian and James. You see, Vivian whispered. Family isn't always blood. That evening, while Vivian helped me with my exercises, my phone rang again. This time it was my grandson Tyler, Melissa's 19-year-old son, calling from college in California. Grandma, what's going on? Mom and Dad are saying you've lost your mind or something. His confusion was genuine. Tyler had always been gentle, somewhat removed from his parents' materialism. It's complicated, sweetheart. I began carefully. Your parents and I are having a serious disagreement about financial matters. Is it true you kicked them out of their house? He asked hesitantly. The house is in my name, I explained. And yes, I asked them to leave after they made it clear they weren't willing to help during my recovery. A pause. Is that why you paid for my summer program last year? So you could hold it over everyone's heads later? The question hurt more than I expected. Melissa's narrative had seeped even here. Tyler, I have never kept a ledger of the things I've done for people I love, I said steadily. I paid for your program because I believe in your talent. There were no strings attached. Mom says you use money to control everyone, he continued uncertainly. That you've always manipulated her. I closed my eyes briefly. Your mother and I see our history very differently, I said calmly. But whatever happens between us does not change how I feel about you. I don't know what to believe, he admitted. Dad says we might have to move. Mom's crying all the time. Everything's a mess. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, I said sincerely. That isn't fair to you. After the call ended, I sat quietly, reflecting on the ripple effects. Standing up for myself didn't just impact Melissa and Derek. It was reshaping every relationship connected to them. Collateral damage, Vivian said gently, reading my thoughts. He's just a boy, I murmured. He's 19, she reminded me. Old enough to think for himself once the dust settles. Later that night, I stood in front of the guest bathroom mirror and truly looked at myself. The woman staring back felt both familiar and unfamiliar. The same gray-streaked hair. The same laugh lines. But there was something new in her eyes, steadiness. Resolve. In just 48 hours, allies had emerged from everywhere. Colleagues. Friends. Professionals who respected me enough to question the false narrative being spread about me. For decades, I had poured every ounce of emotional energy into one relationship, neglecting the quiet, loyal community surrounding me all along. Enough, I whispered to my reflection. It's time to rewrite this story. The next morning, James arrived with a notary and a thick stack of documents that would fundamentally reshape my future. As we spread the papers across Vivian's dining table, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. Grief for what had been. Liberation for what was finally ending. We'll start with the revocation of power of attorney, James explained, sliding the first document toward me. This nullifies any previous authorization Melissa had to act on your behalf. Picked up the pen. My hand hovered over the signature line. Will this become public record? Yes, James confirmed. That's partly the point. It creates an official paper trail showing you've explicitly removed her authority. For a moment, I thought about the past 20 years, about the trust one had once placed in my daughter. Then I signed. My hand was surprisingly steady. Next came the healthcare proxy, the document that would determine who could make medical decisions for me if I became incapacitated. For over 2 decades, Melissa's name had filled that space. Have you decided who you'd like to name instead? James asked gently. I looked at Vivian, who had stood quietly beside me through all of this. Would you be willing? Her eyes widened. Of course, Anne. I'd be honored. But are you certain? More certain than I've been about anything in years, I replied softly. I trust you with my life. Literally, in this case. When I signed that document, it felt as if a weight lifted from my chest. No longer would I fear that a health crisis might hand control back to Melissa. The final document was the most difficult. My revised will. You don't have to finalize everything today, James reminded me. This is a preliminary revision to ensure Melissa and Derek don't remain your primary beneficiaries. I stared at the blank spaces where their names had once defined my future. I've never imagined anyone else, I admitted. Take your time, James said. Many clients establish charitable foundations or trusts with specific purposes. Others benefit institutions that meant something to them. As he spoke, an idea slowly formed. Boston Memorial has a nursing scholarship program, I said. For years, I've watched talented nurse aides struggle to advance their education while working full-time. I'd like to help with that. James nodded. A scholarship endowment would be entirely feasible with your assets. And Tyler, I added, thinking of my grandson. He shouldn't suffer for his parents' behavior. I want to establish a trust for him, something Melissa and Derek can't touch. It should support his education. Maybe even help him buy his first home someday. Very reasonable, James said. Anything else? I thought of my modest jewelry collection, especially my mother's pearls, which I had always assumed would go to Melissa. Caroline Jenkins has a daughter who just started nursing school, I said slowly. I'd like my mother's pearls to go to her. As we worked through the remaining details, I realized something profound. I was dismantling the future I had always assumed would happen. One where everything naturally flowed to my daughter because that's what mothers do. In its place, I was creating something intentional. A legacy built on values rather than obligation. By the time James and the notary left, I felt emotionally drained, but strangely peaceful. The papers were signed. The decisions made. There would be no returning to what had been. How do you feel? Vivian asked, bringing me tea while I rested my leg. Like I've attended my own funeral, I admitted. But also like I've been reborn. She nodded. Endings and beginnings often happen at the same time. That afternoon, my physical therapist, Marcus, arrived for our first home session. Vivian had arranged for him to come to her apartment instead of the outpatient facility. Another quiet kindness. In a constellation of support. As Marcus guided me through exercises that left sweat beading across my forehead, my phone rang. Melissa, do you want to answer it? Vivian asked. I shook my head. Not right now. The ringing stopped. Moments later, a text appeared. I know what you did. Changing your will won't fix what's broken between us. Call me when you're ready to have a real conversation instead of hiding behind lawyers. My hand trembled slightly as I showed Vivian. How did she find out so quickly? Small communities talk, Marcus said unexpectedly. Banks, law offices, medical facilities, staff gossip. I've seen it before. None taken, I replied. You're probably right. After he left, I stared at Melissa's message. Was there real pain behind it? Or just fear of losing access? You don't have to decide anything now, Vivian said gently. I know, I sighed. But eventually, I'll have to face her. On your terms, she said firmly. When you're stronger. Physically and emotionally. That evening, the doorbell rang around 7. Vivian looked through the peephole and stiffened. It's Derek. My heart raced. I don't want to see him. I'll handle it. She opened the door slightly, security chain still fastened. I need to speak with Anne. Derek's voice was tightly controlled. She's not receiving visitors, Vivian replied. This is family business. You have no right to interfere. I have every right to decide who enters my home, she answered calmly. And Anne has made her wishes clear. Just tell her we're staying at the Marriott downtown, Derek continued, his tone softening. Our credit cards are being declined. We can't access any accounts. Does she understand what she's doing to us? I believe she understands perfectly. Melissa's a mess. Is this what she wanted? To destroy her own daughter. That word destroy struck me, as if my self-protection were an act of cruelty. It's all right, Viv, I called. Let me speak to him. Using my walker, I made my way to the door. Derek looked terrible. Only 3 days had passed, but his usual polished appearance had crumbled. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes tired. And, he began carefully, this has gotten out of hand. We need to talk. No, I said quietly. What you need is space. And consequences. So this is punishment? His politeness cracked. This is reality, I replied. 2 adults with medical degrees and 6-figure salaries should not be dependent on an elderly woman's accounts. You've always been generous, he argued. How were we supposed to know you'd changed the rules? The entitlement stunned me. Then clarity came. Perhaps when you told me you weren't my nurses, I said calmly. You should have remembered I was never your banker. I closed the door. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from power. Bravo, Vivian whispered. That night, I lay awake replaying Derek's words. Our credit cards are being declined. How had 2 successful professionals become so dependent on me that 3 days without access left them stranded? The answer was painful, because I had allowed it. Years of unquestioned generosity had quietly transformed into expectation. Expectation into entitlement. I had built the very dependency I was now dismantling. And as difficult as this upheaval was, perhaps it was necessary. Not just for me, but for them as well. With that thought, I finally drifted off to sleep, dreaming not of the past I was leaving behind, but of the future I was reclaiming. 2 weeks after my confrontation with Derek, I was settling into a new rhythm. My knee was healing well, thanks to Marcus's diligent therapy sessions and my own stubborn determination. I could now move short distances with just a cane, each careful step a small hard-won victory. Pain still whispered its presence, but it no longer controlled me. Vivian had been an unwavering pillar of support, opening not only her home but her heart. Still, I knew I couldn't remain in her guest room forever. Independence had always been my compass, and we had begun gently discussing what my next chapter might look like when an unexpected call arrived from my grandson Tyler. Grandma, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you. The worry in his voice warmed something deep inside me. I'm doing much better, sweetheart. How are you holding up? There was a pause, long enough to carry more than silence. I'm in Boston. Can I see you? The request startled me. You're supposed to be in California for classes. I took a week off, he admitted. Things at home are intense. Mom and Dad are fighting constantly. They had to move into a small apartment. Mom keeps saying it's all your fault, but Dad's blaming her for mismanaging their finances. I just needed to get away from it. My heart ached for him. At 19, he should have been worrying about exams and friendships, not standing in the wreckage of his parents' choices. Of course you can see me, I said gently. But I should warn you, I'm not at my apartment. I'm staying with a friend. That's fine. I just want to hear your side of the story. After speaking with Vivian, we arranged for him to visit that afternoon. The hours before he arrived felt longer than they should have. I wondered what Melissa had told him, how much had been twisted, and whether his visit was born of genuine concern or careful persuasion. When the doorbell rang at 3, Vivian squeezed my shoulder reassuringly before answering it. Tyler stood in the doorway looking both older and younger than I remembered. His hair had grown longer since Christmas, and there was a weariness in his eyes that didn't belong on someone his age. Hi, Grandma, he said awkwardly, lingering at the threshold. Tyler. I opened my arms. After a brief hesitation, he stepped forward and hugged me. It's so good to see you. Vivian discreetly retreated to her bedroom, granting us privacy. You look good, Tyler said, studying me carefully as he sat down. Mom said you were having cognitive issues after your surgery. A small sad laugh escaped me. I assure you my mind is perfectly clear. The only thing I'm suffering from is belated clarity. What happened, Grandma? Everything was fine at Christmas. Now Mom says you've gone crazy and are punishing her. I drew in a steady breath, choosing my words with care. Tyler, has your mother ever told you where the money came from for your summer program at Berkeley last year? Or who made the down payment on your parents' house? He frowned slightly. I assumed it was their savings. Or loans. I paid for your program, I said softly, just as I paid for your mother's medical school. And the house. And countless other expenses over the years. His eyes widened. Why? Because I loved you all. I never expected repayment. Only basic kindness. Carefully, without venom, I explained what happened after my surgery. The neglect, the cruel dismissals, the night I was left crawling on the floor rather than helped to the bathroom, and the confrontation that finally forced me to see what I had refused to acknowledge for years. They wouldn't help you? He asked, horror flickering across his face. But Mom's a doctor. Being a doctor doesn't automatically make someone compassionate, I replied quietly. Even toward family. He sat in silence, absorbing. They told me you went crazy, he admitted. That you expected them to wait on you hand and foot. Tyler, I spent 4 decades as a nurse. I understand demanding careers. What I couldn't understand was why my own daughter would leave me in pain on the floor. So, you kicked them out? The house is in my name. I paid for it. They hadn't been making the mortgage payments, despite earning over $500,000 a year. His eyebrows shot up. They make that much? Yes. But they've lived beyond their means for years. When I removed my financial support, reality caught up with them. Why not just talk to them? Why the lawyers? The innocence in his question almost broke my heart. Because when people show you who they are, you must believe them. Your parents showed me how they saw me. Not as a mother deserving care, but as a resource. And now they choose whether to acknowledge their behavior or continue blaming me. And you? I squeezed his hand. You get to decide what you believe based on what you see, not what you're told. He looked down. They want me to convince you to unfreeze the accounts. Mom said if I talk sense into you, everything would go back to normal. There it was, the truth beneath the visit. Is that why you came? I asked gently. He hesitated, then nodded. At first. But now? I don't know. And what do you think now? I think something serious must have happened. You've always been there for us. It wasn't sudden for me, I said. It was years of being taken for granted. The surgery simply made it undeniable. We spoke for another hour, questions, answers, long silences. I refused to demonize his parents. They were flawed, not monstrous. But accountability mattered. As he prepared to leave, he asked quietly, Are you going to write Mom out of your will? The bluntness startled me. Has she discussed my will with you? He nodded, embarrassed. She said you're cutting her off from her rightful inheritance. Over one argument. I steadied myself. I have restructured my estate. Some assets will fund nursing scholarships. Some will go to charitable causes. And some, I met his eyes, will be placed in trust for you, accessible when you're older. For me, inheritance is not a right, Tyler. It's a gift. And gifts belong to those who show gratitude, not entitlement. He hugged me tightly before leaving. I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm glad I came. I needed to see for myself. I'm more than okay, I told him. I'm finally learning to value myself. After he left, Vivian emerged. They sent him to unfreeze the accounts, I said quietly. Are you surprised? No. Just disappointed. Using him as leverage says more about them than about you, she replied. Later that night, a text came from Tyler. Told Mom and Dad I saw you. They're not happy. I'm going back to school tomorrow. Thanks for being honest with me. Love you, Grandma. It wasn't blind allegiance. It wasn't a dramatic declaration. But it was something deeper, an acknowledgement that truth requires listening. As I prepared for bed, I realized Tyler's visit had clarified something essential. I could not control how my daughter chose to see me. I could not repair what she refused to examine. But I could break the cycle of silent enabling. I could model boundaries even when they were misunderstood. For years I had believed love meant sacrifice without limits. Now I understood that love without self-respect becomes self-abandonment. And I was done abandoning myself. For the first time in decades I felt something steady and unshakable settle inside me. Not anger, not vengeance, but peace born of clarity. The future I was reclaiming was not built on control or compliance. It was built on dignity. This journey wasn't only about setting boundaries with Melissa and Derek. It was about something deeper. Something generational. It was about giving the next generation a different blueprint. A model of self-respect, emotional balance, and healthy love. Perhaps that, more than money, property, or inheritance, would become my true legacy. 3 weeks after Tyler's visit, I made a decision that surprised even me. I moved into Golden Pines Rehabilitation Center. Not because Melissa had once tried to have me committed there, but because I chose it. The irony was not lost on me. "Are you sure about this?" Vivian asked gently as she helped me pack the few belongings I'd need. "You're welcome to stay with me until you're fully recovered." "I'm sure," I said, carefully folding my sweater and placing it into the suitcase. "You've been incredible, Viv. Truly. But I need to rebuild my independence." The truth was more layered than I admitted aloud. Yes, I needed to regain physical strength. But I also needed emotional distance. Space to process the earthquake that had shifted my life. Space to heal without feeling like a burden. Golden Pines was a place I knew well. For decades I had sent patients there, confident they would receive excellent care. Now I would become one of them. Caroline arranged a private room overlooking the gardens. Many of the staff were former colleagues. They greeted me not with sterile professionalism, but with genuine warmth. "Nurse Simmons," Maria exclaimed, once a nervous graduate under my supervision, now the rehabilitation unit's manager. "We gave you our best room, though it feels strange having you as a patient instead of giving us orders." I smiled. "It's just a now. And I promised to be a model patient." My days quickly fell into rhythm. Physical therapy in the mornings. Occupational therapy in the afternoons. Quiet evenings spent reading or talking with other residents. The work was painful but purposeful. Each day brought measurable progress. My knee bent further. My strength returned incrementally. What I hadn't anticipated was how Golden Pines would become a gathering place for my unexpected support system. Vivian visited daily, often bringing magazines or small treats. Caroline stopped by during breaks with snippets of hospital gossip. Even Dr. Harrison came personally to check my surgical site rather than sending a resident. "You've made quite an impression on people over the years," Vivian observed one afternoon, watching another stream of visitors leave my room. "I've never seen someone in rehab with this many guests." "I never realized," I admitted. "When you're working, you don't think about the connections you're building. You're just doing your job." Vivian shook her head firmly. "No, Anne. You were never just doing your job. You invested in people. And now they're returning that investment." A week into my stay, Marcus, my physical therapist, shared unexpected news. "Your daughter's been calling," he said casually while guiding me along the parallel bars. "Asking about your progress. Your discharge date. Whether you're receiving visitors." My steps faltered. "What have you told her?" "Nothing without your permission," he assured me. "Confidentiality applies, even with family." But she's persistent. Melissa had always been persistent when she wanted something. "If she calls again," Marcus asked gently, "what would you like us to say?" I completed another careful pass between the bars before answering. "Just that I'm progressing well, and will contact her when I'm ready." That evening, alone in my room, I stared at my silent phone. 3 unopened messages from Melissa. 1 from Derek. Part of me wanted to delete them without reading. Another part wanted to know. Before I could decide, a soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Maria stepped inside, apologetic. "I'm so sorry to disturb you, Anne, but there's someone insisting on seeing you. She says she's your daughter." My heart raced. "Melissa's here?" Maria nodded. She's at the front desk claiming it's her right as next of kin to assess your care. I told her visiting hours are over, but she's threatening to call administration. The old version of me would have given in immediately, but I was no longer that woman. Please tell her I'm not accepting visitors this evening, I said steadily, and remind her, as a medical professional, to respect patient privacy and protocol. Maria exhaled in relief. I'll tell her. I'll alert security just in case. For the first time in our adult relationship, I had denied Melissa access to me. It felt terrifying and exhilarating. Minutes later, my phone rang. Hello, Melissa. They won't let me see you, she snapped. What have you told them? Only that I'm not accepting visitors tonight. It's been a long day. I'm not just any visitor. I'm your daughter. Your only child. Yes, I said calmly. And when I'm ready to see you, I'll let you know. Ready, she scoffed. We need to talk about what you've done, the accounts, the house, the will. You can't cut me out over one bad day. It wasn't one bad day, I said quietly. It was years of imbalance. And we will talk. But not tonight. Not until I'm stronger. Tyler says you've been manipulating him too, she accused. Telling him about some trust fund while cutting me out. I manipulated no one. I answered his questions honestly. Fine, she snapped. Stay there with your nurse friends. Play the victim. But don't expect me to come crawling back when you realize how lonely life is without family. Is that what you think this is about? I asked. That I want you to crawl back? Isn't it? This whole dramatic production so we'll grovel for forgiveness. I sighed. No, Melissa. This isn't revenge. It's self-respect. It's boundaries, something I should have learned decades ago. Boundaries, she mocked. Is that what your therapist calls it? Looks like revenge to me. I'm sorry you see it that way, I said, refusing to rise to her bait. When you're ready to acknowledge how your actions affected me, I'll be here. Until then, I need space to heal. Whatever, Mom. Call me when you're done with your empowerment journey. The line went dead. My hands trembled, but my mind was clear. Beneath her anger, I had heard something unmistakable. Fear. For the first time in her adult life, she was facing a mother who would not capitulate. Maria checked on me shortly after. Everything okay? Better than okay, I said, surprised by my own certainty. I think I just passed an important test. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in weeks. The confrontation would come, but on my terms. The next morning, Marcus noticed the change. You're moving differently today, he observed. More confident. I smiled. Let's just say I've stopped carrying unnecessary baggage. He laughed, not realizing how literal that statement was. 6 weeks after surgery, I was discharged from Golden Pines. The staff presented me with a playful certificate decorated in gold stars. My knee still felt stiff in the mornings. But it worked. I could walk unassisted, climb stairs carefully, stand long enough to cook. It was time to go home. And this time I would be walking into it stronger, not just in body but in spirit. Not to Melissa's house. Not to Vivian's guest room. But to my own apartment. The one that had stood silent and empty these past weeks. Are you sure you don't want to stay with me a bit longer? Vivian asked gently as she helped me pack the last of my things. Your place has been closed up for a while. James had a cleaning service go through it last week, I assured her. And I need to start living my own life again. What I didn't say, what stayed locked inside my chest, was that I was finally ready for the confrontation I had been postponing. By returning to my own space, I wasn't just reclaiming my apartment. I was reclaiming my independence, my dignity, my emotional autonomy. As Vivian drove me home, anticipation twisted together with anxiety in my stomach. My apartment building, an elegant pre-war structure in Back Bay, had always meant safety to me, stability, permanence. Now I wondered if it would feel different, knowing how much of my world had shifted. When we pulled up to the curb, I froze. Tyler was sitting on the steps. A duffel bag rested at his feet. Grandma! He stood quickly as I stepped out of the car, careful with my healing knee. Surprise! Tyler? What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in California for finals? He hugged me gently, mindful of my recovery. Finals were last week. I'm on summer break now. Thought if it's okay, I could stay with you for a few days. I studied his face. Dark circles under his eyes. Tension around his mouth. Of course you can stay, I said softly. But does your mother know you're here? His jaw tightened. Yeah, she knows. That's kind of why I'm here. Inside, my apartment smelled freshly cleaned, but underneath that it still smelled like home. Like me. Tyler and Vivian carried in my belongings while I sank onto my familiar sofa with a long exhale. It's good to be home, I murmured, running my fingers over the fabric. After Vivian left with promises to check in tomorrow, Tyler sat across from me, shoulders stiff. What's going on, sweetheart? I asked gently. You didn't fly across the country just to welcome me home. He inhaled deeply. Mom and Dad are getting divorced. The words hit like a sudden gust of cold wind. Despite everything, Melissa and Derek had always presented themselves as united, especially when it came to money. I'm so sorry, I said sincerely. When did this happen? Dad moved out about 3 weeks ago. They've been fighting constantly since everything with you happened. He looked down at his hands. Dad says Mom's spending habits destroyed their credit and buried them in debt. Mom says Dad never would have married her if he hadn't believed he'd eventually get your money. The ugliness of it all made my chest ache. And Tyler caught between them. And how are you handling it? I asked. Not great, he admitted. That's part of why I came. I needed to get away. I can't stand being in the middle anymore. You're always welcome here, I said, squeezing his hand. There's something else, he added carefully. Mom knows I'm here. She wants to come talk to you. She says it's time to clear the air. My body tensed. Did she put you up to this? Ask you to soften me first. No, he said quickly, almost hurt. She knew I was coming, but this was my idea. I want you both to try. His hope was so raw. So young. When does she want to come? I asked. Tomorrow afternoon. She has the day off. I nodded slowly. Tell her 2 o'clock. Then I looked at him seriously. Tyler, this conversation may not go the way you're hoping. Some rifts can't be repaired in one meeting. I know, he said quietly. I just want you both to try. That evening, after settling him into the guest room, I called James. Are you sure you're ready for this? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied. It has to happen. Do you want me there? Or Vivian? The offer tempted me, but I shook my head. No, this needs to be between Melissa and me. Call me immediately after, he instructed. And remember, you don't have to agree to anything on the spot. The next morning I woke early. Decades of hospital shifts had permanently set my internal clock. I found Tyler in the kitchen attempting breakfast. I thought you might want protein after all that hospital food, he said, presenting slightly overcooked eggs. It looks wonderful, I assured him. As we ate, I studied him. His father's height, Melissa's eyes. He was the best of both of them. Tyler, I began carefully, when your mother comes today, I need you to make yourself scarce. Go to a movie. Visit the public garden. Anything. But what if? No what ifs, I said firmly. This isn't your burden. It's between your mother and me. Reluctantly, he agreed. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Tyler had left an hour earlier. I straightened my shoulders and opened the door. Melissa stood there. She looked both familiar and foreign. She'd lost weight. Her tailored suit hung slightly loose. There was a hardness around her mouth that hadn't been there before. Mom, she said evenly. Melissa, I replied, stepping aside. Come in. She entered cautiously, scanning the apartment as if looking for signs of change. I had arranged 2 chairs facing each other, close enough for conversation, far enough for boundaries. Tea, I offered. No, she said sharply. I think we've had enough pretense. I met her gaze. Why are you here? Tyler thinks we need to talk, she said dryly. And what do you think? She sighed, some of her tension slipping. I think our relationship is beyond repair. But I also think we need closure. Closure, I repeated. That sounds very final. Isn't that what you wanted? She shot back. When you froze the accounts. Evicted us? Rewrote your will. What I wanted, I said steadily, was respect, consideration, basic kindness from my daughter when I was vulnerable. She flinched only slightly. One bad day, Mom. We had one bad day after years of taking care of you. And you punished us like criminals. Taking care of me? I echoed. Melissa, I financially supported you and Derek for years. I paid for your education, your wedding, your house. And never let us forget it. She interrupted, color rising in her cheeks. Every gift came with invisible strings. Every generous gesture reminded me I couldn't succeed on my own. Her words struck like a slap. Is that truly how you saw my help? I asked quietly. As a power play? What else was I supposed to think? She demanded. The name the great Nurse Simmons had followed me my entire life. A reputation, a title, a story people told about me long before they knew me as a mother. But to Melissa it was something else entirely. Growing up in your shadow was exhausting, she said, her voice tight with decades of suppressed emotion. Everyone knew you, respected you, admired you, and I was just the daughter who was supposed to become you. I blinked, genuinely stunned. Melissa, everything I did was for you. Every overtime shift, every promotion I chased. It was all so you could have opportunities one never had. So I could become you, she shot back bitterly. But I never could. I was never good enough on my own terms. The words landed heavily in my chest. For the first time, I wondered if my pride in her achievements had felt like pressure instead of love. I never meant to make you feel small, I said quietly. I thought I was helping, showing love the only way I knew how. By buying it, she replied flatly. Silence filled the room between us like a third presence. And when we couldn't repay that love the way you expected, she continued, you took it away. That accusation hurt more than I expected. I didn't take love away, I said. I just wanted you to see me as more than a financial safety net. More than someone you only needed when things were falling apart. She stood then, jaw tense. You wanted control, she said. You couldn't control me with guilt and generosity anymore, so you found another way. This wasn't about winning, I told her. There are no winners here, Melissa. She paused at the door. Tell Tyler I'll call him tomorrow. When she left, I felt something strange settle inside me. Not closure, not forgiveness, but clarity. Raw truth had replaced years of polite distance. And somehow that felt lighter. Tyler noticed it immediately when he came home that evening. It didn't go well, did it? He asked, sitting beside me. It went honestly, I said. Sometimes honesty hurts before it heals. He nodded thoughtfully. At 19, he already carried a surprising emotional intelligence. She's hurting too, he said quietly. Even before everything, she was always trying to prove something to everyone. I studied him. When did you become so wise? I watch people, he said with a small smile. That's why I chose psychology instead of medicine. That night we ordered pizza, a rare indulgence in my carefully disciplined life, and talked about his studies in California, his friends, his dreams. Then he surprised me. Can I stay with you for the summer? The request warmed my heart instantly. You're always welcome here, I said. What about your parents? His smile faded slightly. Dad is moving to Chicago. Mom, she's not doing well. We just make each other miserable lately. I squeezed his hand. You can stay as long as you need. In the following weeks, our apartment developed a quiet rhythm. I continued my recovery exercises, slowly strengthening my knee, and extending my walks from short trips around the block to nearly a full mile. Tyler slept late like most college students do. We shared meals, watched old movies I loved when I was younger, talked about life in soft, comfortable tones. Then one morning, my friend Vivian appeared outside my building with coffee in hand. Surprise inspection, she said. I want the real version of how you're doing. Over coffee, she studied me closely. You look stronger, she said. I feel stronger, I admitted. When I told her about the emotional distance between Melissa and me, she nodded. You wouldn't have even admitted there was another perspective 6 months ago, she reminded me gently. She was right. For decades I believed my intentions were enough. That love was obvious because I meant it to be. I was finally learning that love also required listening to how it was received. I decided to return to work, not full nursing shifts, but something meaningful. Patient advocacy felt right. Are you sure that's wise? Vivian asked. Melissa works there. It's a big hospital, I said. I can't arrange my life around avoiding my daughter. Purpose had always been part of who I was. And I missed that feeling. The interview day arrived. I stood in front of my closet, torn between professionalism and comfort. Finally, I chose a teal blouse Tyler once said brought out my eyes, paired with simple black slacks. You've got this, Grandma, Tyler said, hugging me before I left. Just be yourself. Simple advice. Profound truth. The interview went better than I imagined. The department director, once one of my nursing students, greeted me warmly. Nurse Simmons, we're thrilled you applied, she said. 2 hours later, I walked out with a job offer. 3 shifts per week as a patient advocate. It felt like coming home to a version of myself I had almost forgotten. Then I saw Melissa walking through the hospital entrance in her white coat. For a moment I thought about hiding. Instead I kept walking. She looked up. Surprise. Exhaustion. Something softer I couldn't name. Mom, she said cautiously. What are you doing here? I had an interview, I said. I start next week. She blinked, clearly surprised. You're really coming back here? It's a big hospital, I repeated. We won't have to cross paths often. Silence stretched between us. How are you? I asked finally. Managing, she said. Then quietly. The divorce will be final next month. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. She studied me. I thought you'd be glad to see us fall apart. No, I said firmly. I only ever wanted you to be happy. She nodded. Tyler, she said, was the best thing she and her husband had done right. That was enough acknowledgement for now. That evening, Tyler and I celebrated my new job with Thai takeout. You seem lighter, he said. I feel lighter, I replied. For the first time, I continued, I'm making decisions for myself. How does that feel? I smiled. It feels like rebirth. 68 and reborn, he teased. Why not? I said. Some flowers bloom late. But they bloom beautifully anyway. As the golden light of evening filled my apartment, I realized something powerful. The life I had once tried so hard to protect with sacrifice and control was gone. In its place was something better. Authenticity. Boundaries. Self-respect. Not the future I once imagined, but the future I deserved. And for the first time in decades, that was enough.